Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. We'll wait just a few clicks as you get into the live. Thank you again, everyone out there, for tapping into the Minding Our Business Financial Academy. It's another Sunday night, and you're hopefully beginning to get accustomed to, this is the time that we set aside to do our weekly meeting. We've taken this time to teach a lesson as well and kind of use this as a prompt for all of you to really begin to plan your fiscal week. My name is Lionel Allen, and welcome. I am the founder and lead instructor here with the Minding Our Business Academy, as we affectionately call it, the MOB Academy, because here we're really focused on not watching what our neighbor's doing, not doing all the trendy stuff that we see and hear online and social media. We're really focused on minding our business, working on our personal stewardship skills, and in as a result, seeking to build wealth and really just be obedient to the calling that I believe that's on all of our lives, to be faithful stewards of the blessings the Lord is continually bestowing upon us. So, if you've been tracking with us, if you were in one of our previous lives, then you know we've been focusing on the 7 account framework. This is a framework that I developed over a decade ago as I was along my own financial stewardship journey. And I was teaching in Sunday school, teaching at church, teaching adults and early teenagers, early young adults as well, how to steward and manage their finances. And the Lord helped me out with this. It really, the root of this comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 2. I'll read that for you in a little bit, but I don't want to distract you or confuse you with the focus for tonight. I will do a quick recap to get us started here, but I really want to give you the spiritual focus for tonight first. Then in the recap, I'll go through the scripture that prompted this framework, bring you up to speed on what we talked about the last 2 weeks, and then get right into where we left off. So let me read a piece of scripture for you. For this evening, it's going to be Haggai chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. And I'm reading from the New International Version. I hope you can follow along with me. But this is what it says. Now, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but are not warm. You earn wages, only to put them in a purse with holes in it. I always say when I read that, people say the Bible is an ancient document, which it is, and some people like to discredit it because of its origin, but that was some 21st century wisdom for us there. All of us living in the 21st century, we have an abundance of things, particularly if you're living in the United States, or if you're living in many of the countries today where we all have technology, we all have more clothes than we can wear. There's fast food and fine dining and all these things on nearly every corner. But what does the Bible say? The Bible says we never get our fill. And that speaks to our heart posture and our behaviors with what God has trusted us with. So to get us right to the lesson point, again, welcome all of you who are joining us online for this live. We are going to really focus on the 7 account framework. So the 7 account framework, this is a framework of how you can custom build out a system of managing your funds. It really comes from the old adage, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I know when we have that conversation financially, most people apply it to investing, right? They talk about their 401k, They talk about buying paper assets, which are stock. They talk about diversifying those paper assets by buying into multiple companies. But in a sense, you're just doing one activity. You're buying paper assets in the stock market in one location. So for me, that's not true diversification. Diversification doesn't only just apply to investing. For me, and based on this framework that I developed, it is for the management of your money. It really is leaning on a principle that I call the principle of allocation. And that was the big topic last week. Really, how do we begin to allocate the dollars that are coming in towards the needs, the wants, and the responsibilities that we have? So if you were tracking with us, the very first week, we started out with the giving account. For me, being a faith-based individual, giving is absolutely first. That is the commission that we see and is replicated and is modeled from the very beginning of the Bible in Genesis, when the Bible talks about Cain and Abel. Abel gave of his first fruit, right? So giving has always been a part of the Christian way of life. And for other people, other faith-based individuals, giving is a big part of that as well too. So for us, giving was the very first account. And the mechanics of the giving account was really about setting aside that 10% that's talked about within the Bible, the tithe. So dedicating that to a completely separate account than where the rest of your funds are. And again, we're tithing from our gross. So in order to accomplish that effectively out of our net income, you have to go a tick above the 10%. For me, it was always 15%. I would dedicate 15% of my net income. At the time, I was a W-2 wage earner. So I would direct deposit that directly to a complete separate account. And that's where I would write checks or actually go get the cash, or whichever way you want to deploy it. Many churches nowadays are using apps and different digital transfer methods. It allows you to connect it to that account and have the funds truly dedicated, and as the Bible says, set aside. The second account we looked at was our opportunity fund. Again, the nomenclature I use is an opportunity. I like to seek out opportunities. I tend to think in the positive. It historically was called a rainy day fund. People talked about it like that. What is the goal of this account? The initial goal is to set aside 3 months of your actual living expenses. So what does it cost to operate your household? And we talked a little bit about how to get to that number, what's included in that number. And once you derive that number, you're really focused on getting 3 months of that number in a separate dedicated savings account. You could even use some sort of money market high yield account. And then once you get to that, there is a second goal. The second goal is 6 months. So initial goal, baby steps, if you will, is to get to 3 months. The ultimate goal after that is to get to 6 months. Once you get to 6 months, there's an action step that occurs there, a trigger, if you will. What you're looking to do once you get to that 6 months of your operating expense of your household, and you have that set aside, then that's when you start looking for opportunities to acquire some sort of cash producing asset. That's extremely important. If you follow me on social media, you probably saw one of my previous shorts or reels where I talked about, and I was trying to debunk, and I'll continue to do that, the nest egg principle. In order for that nest egg principle to be valid and true, you have to know a few things. First, you have to know your personal expiry date. You have to know when you're going to die, when the Lord will call you home. If you don't know that, then that's really the end result of the time period you're tracking the dollars for. Secondly, you have to know what the rate of inflation will be for the duration of your life. Why? Because if you save up dollars, inflation will eat away at cash dollars if they're just being saved. Nest egg, right? And then you also have to know what your lifestyle cost will be You will have to fix them for the rest of your life. Those three things will have to be important and actually in place for the nest egg principle to be valid and to work for you. And quite honestly, there's no way you can predict the first two things. The third thing, you may be able to fix that in by there's a whole host of things that people are doing, downsizing their home, moving to other countries. There's a lot of different things people are doing nowadays. But in order for the nest egg to be true, you got to know when you're going to die, and you got to know the rate of inflation wherever you live to know if how long that money will actually last you and what your buying power with that is. So I don't like the nest egg method. I am a person who deals on finding assets, acquiring them, and living off that cash flow. The cash flow is something that's consistent. And as inflation occurs, guess what? Your asset actually goes up in value and then it produces even more income. For me, it's real estate. So, what has happened with rent? In the 48 years I've been alive, I've never seen rent retract back to lower numbers. I've seen rent incrementally increase throughout my life. When I was a renter over 20 years ago, even now, as I look at the properties that I own, rent is always and constantly increasing. Why? Because it's tied to inflation. So by acquiring those types of assets, you're actually hedging your bet against inflation, because as inflation occurs, your income also increases because you're holding these assets. So that is the opportunity fund. The last one that we tackled last week, that's probably the most important for most people whose finances are out of whack. And I recently did a reel, and it may not be live yet, but you'll see it. I kind of debunk financial literacy. A lot of people think financial literacy, financial management, well, that's for people who don't make enough money. That's for people who are struggling to make ends meet. That is a misnomer. Financial literacy and financial management is most impactful for high wage earners. Why? We convince ourselves that we have enough. I'll get paid again another $10,000 next month. I'll get another $20,000 next month. And that's how we justify the misappropriation, the misallocation that we are doing today. Because we make a lot, we think we can spend a lot. We think we can afford a lot. And that is usually where I found, at least in my client group, the most need is for the people who make six figures and up. So the people between 100 and 400,000, those are usually the people who take multiple vacations a year. They drive some sort of high-end car. They live in a beautiful home, and then they have other expenses related to their family. Maybe their kids are in private school and all those other things they can elect to take on because they have the higher income, and they justify the higher expenditure with the higher income. It's called the Parkinson's rule. I also did a reel about that. Scroll through and find it. Now, with the operating account, we were talking about balancing out your expenses between the 1st and 15th and the 15th and the 30th. And once you get those things balanced out, then you allocate the funds into the account, that operating account that's dedicated for that work. And then you put everything on auto pay. You put a little extra money in there, and that's your buffer in case something else hits your account you're not anticipated. Maybe your electric bill's a little high because the winter months are coming. Maybe you had a leak at a property or something, and your water bill all of a sudden is much higher than it was. That buffer will accommodate that. But what that allows you to do is separate your household living expense from your discretionary funds that are coming out of your checking account. So that eliminates overdraft fees, because now you can actually look at a schedule and really anticipate when things will be coming out of that account. So those are the three accounts we've looked at thus far. And now we're going to dive into accounts number 4 and accounts number 5. Account number 4, the maintenance fund. What are you talking about, Lionel? The maintenance fund? What do I have to maintain? Well, everything that you have. If you have a car, call it the brake fund or the oil change fund or whatever else may go wrong with your car, or just the assets that you own. If you're a homeowner, you know all about the hot water heater, the AC, the heater, the roof, the windows, the decking, the landscaping, and on and on and on. There are always things that require maintenance in the liabilities and the assets that you own. Why not prepare for it? So let's talk a little bit about this maintenance fund. Thank you, producer. I have a graphic up that you can follow along. It's quite simple. What you want to look at is the things that you owned. What are they worth? It may be a car, maybe several cars, it may be cars and homes. It may be other things you have to entertain yourself, boats and RVs and four-wheelers and all the toys we like to collect, particularly those of us who've made a high income, as I mentioned earlier. So you want to look at what are the proposed values of those things, not what you bought it for. What is the current value of it? If you want to go a step deeper, you can go by, and this is something you could go by and do today. You could go by your local dealership, give them the make and model of your car, and they will give you a printout of what the typical service costs are on a vehicle of that age, make, and model. You could look up the same thing with your household. You could go into Chat GPT or AI or any of the new technology we have and begin to look up, what does it cost to replace a hot water heater? What's a new heater cost in my area? What's a replacement AC would cost me? And based on those numbers you have, what I like to do is look at the overall number of what the value of the assets are or the liabilities and account for it between 10 to 15% of their actual value. Once I derive that number, just to use some easy flat numbers for us, let's say I have $20,000 worth of liabilities. Let's say it's an older car and some other things that I own. I want to look at between 10 and 15% of that. So it should be somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000 a year that I'm actually spending on maintenance to maintain those things. Once you've derived that number, you simply divide that number by 12. That is the monthly amount you need to allocate to your maintenance fund. So when that car needs brakes, all of a sudden your check engine light comes on. You are not scrambling for a credit card. You're not asking family members to lend you money to take care of these things. You've already allocated and set aside the funds in a completely separate account. You can keep it in a checking account, a checking or savings account, but make sure that that 10 to 15% annually, you begin to allocate that money every single month so that when the issue arises, the money is already there, dedicated. You don't need to take on further debt in order to meet that maintenance need that you already knew in the back of your mind was going to happen at some point, right? Things like brakes and tires and oil changes are regular scheduled maintenance. That's what your dealer calls them. Why? Because they occur in the same regular intervals. Maybe it's every 2 years you have to put tires on your car, right? Maybe it's every 3 to 5 months you get an oil change, depending on how much you drive. All those things are already on a calendar. It's just your money is not on a calendar to be able to meet the need. So that was our maintenance fund. Again, if you own more valuable things, as you look at the graphic, you might want to allot 10 to 30% even of what the value of these things are to be able to tuck that money away. And again, with inflation, the cost of materials and services has gone up significantly. I know I've seen that in maintaining my own assets. You should plan for these things with a maintenance fund. All right, let's move on to the next account. The next account you will need, and this one, many of you probably said, well, hey, this should have been number 1 or number 2 for me. These are in a very specific order for a reason. The third account is your debt repayment account. Well, you're probably asking, well, Lionel, why'd you put the maintenance account in front of the debt account? Here's why. If you don't begin to set aside and allocate the funds that you need to maintain your liabilities and assets, you'll end up going into debt. So to cut off the debt cycle first, you need to begin to plan for these things. Once you cut off the debt cycle of having that credit card come in to save the day when you have regular occurrences in your life, then you can truly begin to whittle down the debt. What I've seen a lot with clients and people I'm trying to help is they run up a credit card, they pay off the credit card, and then some other life event comes in. They want to go on a trip, they want to pay for something, they use the credit card again, and then they're, Lionel, how do I get this thing paid down? And then I work with them to pay it down. And then they say, well, Lionel, I want to go on a vacation this year. I want to get another car. I had this issue come up. Then the credit card goes back up. And all you're doing is a roller coaster cycle of debt, no debt, debt, no debt, high debt, smaller debt. And you really have not changed anything in that debt cycle. Why? You haven't put a system in place to stop the charging unnecessarily of things that you haven't planned or allocated funds for. So if you look at the progression through the accounts, first we started with the giving, right? That is to open up the spiritual abundance that, if you're a Christian, you believe in. Second was the saving. That was to hedge your household in case anything should happen unforeseen with layoffs, unemployment, a health issue. Third, we talked about setting the household on automation, having that money allocated into your operating account so your household can run smoothly every single month and you're not incurring unnecessary fees. And then we talk about maintenance. So notice that each one of these things is chipping away at things that you would typically use your credit card first for. So what we're trying to do is really get a system in place to stop you from using your credit card as the first option, because that dollar you spend on your credit card is more expensive than that expense that you incurred before you swiped it. Why? You are paying interest on those dollars. That unsecured debt is the most expensive debt that you can incur. It's more expensive than your car. It's more expensive than your home. So we want to mitigate that as much as possible. And that's why you need to follow this framework in that exact order. Now, again, I said this last week, sometimes I will deviate and get a person's third account, the operating account, set up first. That is if your household's in disarray, you have everything coming out of one checking account, and you just can't find your way out. Sometimes we need a little bit of clarity getting our household set up and automated, and then the stress comes off of us. We get additional dollars that were being taken away by overdraft fees and other expenses, and we now redirect them back into the budget. But the reason why the debt repayment comes after the maintenance, because I don't want you to go and pull out the credit card when your car breaks down. I don't want you to go pull out your credit card when your home maintenance issue arises. You want to already have a plan in place. You want to already have allocations to that account, and you already want to have that account funded before that problem arises. And then you can truly create a plan to pay your debt down and not go back on that debt cycle that I was just referencing. That will stop you from going up in debt and then down in debt and up in debt and down in debt as life occurrences happen. So that is the reason why we want to approach this in that order. So now let's look at the debt repayment. What should I do in debt repayment? There's a couple different methods. I know if you do a little Google search or you look on YouTube, you'll find one of two major ways that people talk about attacking debt. There's several ways. There's a ton of them. There's really advanced features, and then there's the basic stuff. Let's start with the basics. The basics are usually one of two methods: the avalanche method and the snowball method. Why are they both cold weather systems? I don't know, but those are the two that are very prominent. The avalanche method is focusing on your debt with the highest interest rates first. So you're not looking at the balances, you're looking at which money is costing me the most and then attacking that. So if you have credit cards, and most credit cards today are upwards of 28.99%, you want to focus on the credit cards with the highest interest rates first. That's the avalanche method. So it's addressing the most expensive money first, despite the balance, and then working your way down the ladder. We'll talk about how to roll up and escalate the funding after I present the snowball. Snowball is looking at the amount. Snowball is looking at the smallest amount that you owe and then begin to roll downhill, if you will. So if you have a debt that's just $500, you attack that, then you attack the debt that's $800, and on and on and on until you get to the debt, the highest dollar amount debt, right? So those are the one or two ways people usually do it. Now, here's the key that actually will get you a little bit more momentum. Whether you're doing the avalanche or the snowball, that first payment you attack, whether it's the high interest or the high balance, you continue to make the other payments. So if you're making minimum payments on the other trade lines or the other accounts, sorry to use some advanced credit language there, but we'll talk about trade lines one of these Sundays. So you're paying those down. So let's say you're paying the minimum on credit cards 2 through 5, but credit card number 1, I'm attacking that with any extra money I have. The key is once you pay that one off, you take that sum that you got accustomed to paying and compound it with that minimum payment or whatever payment you were making on credit card number 2, and then you stack it on top, and that escalates and gives you momentum to pay off credit card number 2. And then you continue into credit card number 3 using the same principle. Just to give you some numbers, let's say just flat numbers, basic numbers, just for calculation. Let's say credit card number 1, I was able to make an extra $200 a month on top of the minimum payment. And credit card number 2, I'm making a $100 minimum payment, right? And on and so forth. Then I rolled that 200 on top of, once the first one's paid off, on top of the second card. Now I'm making a payment of 300 on the second card, if that makes sense. Then once that's paid off, then that 300 rolls on top of whatever payment you're paying on the third card. So that allows you to build momentum and creates that snowball or that avalanche of money that's really attacking your debt. I hope that made sense. If it didn't, please, we're going to share the link at the end. Book a call with me and I'll get more in depth in your situation, and we'll create a very specific and tailored plan to approach your debt. And not only that, build out this 7-account framework for you. All right. So that is the 2 accounts that we wanted to address today. Really, there are more ways to attack it. If you're a homeowner and you have something called a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, there's something called velocity banking, where you can actually put your cash dollars into that HELOC and pay in these chunks in periods throughout the year. If you look up paying off your home loan early, most of the time you'll find information about velocity banking that way. I have quite a few friends and people who leverage this technique to escalate payments to their debt, both secured and unsecured. So there's a lot of unique ways that you can accomplish this. But again, I want to close us out with Haggai chapter 1, verses 5 through 7. Now, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Give careful thought to your ways. You've planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough. You drink, but never have your fill. You put on clothes, but you're not warm. You earn wages only to put them in a purse with holes in it. Let's stop putting our money in a purse with holes in it. Let's patch those holes. Let's build out a system to manage our dollars on a weekly basis. Let's track our dollars on a monthly basis and begin to allocate where we want our money to go in a very strategic and educated way so we can meet the goals that we have for ourselves and we can begin to change some of these, quite frankly, generational curses we've existed in. And we just use language like, I work hard, I deserve it. But that only puts us in a cycle of debt and misappropriation and mismanagement of our funds. And for me, being a person of faith, that is not stewardship. That is not the good and faithful steward that the Bible talks about. So again, I want to give this offer to all of you. If you would like to have a one-on-one, completely free consultation with myself and discuss a little bit about your situation, how we can be of service to you. If this is impactful, if this brings you value, go ahead and click the link. There's a link on the screen as well. If you can't click on that link, go ahead and jot it down. It's www.mindingourbusinessacademy.com. You can find my calendar on there. You can book a call with me. Yes, me, not one of my representatives, and I will do my best to serve you. If you're not in a position yet to get a full consultation, continue to follow us on all our social media channels. That's Minding Our Business. Or you can look for me personally, Lionel_Allen on Instagram, Lionel Allen's Crew on Facebook, and follow us. We continue to put out free content. We also have a free Minding Our Business Facebook community you can join, where you can engage with others, engage with myself, maybe get some of your early questions answered, and we can begin to serve you. So, as we often say, stop scrolling, stop looking at what your neighbor's doing, go out and start minding your business. Thanks for joining us at the MOB Academy. Now stop scrolling and go mind your business.